Facebook Live. Now we're going to be on iTunes. All right, Inappropriate Earl is back. Took a couple weeks off because the ratings were so high. We wanted to marinate in them a little bit and then come back with the man. This is a man who I first met almost 20 years ago when I saw him hosting Potluck at the Comedy Store. Now keep in mind, I was new to the Comedy Store. I knew nothing about the outlaw days of the store in the early 2000s. And there was a kid from La Jolla who was bombing. You know, we all bomb in the original room, but keep in mind this was very new to me. And the host got on the mic, and I can't do an impression of this man, but he said to this kid, "Where are you from?" And the kid meekly said, "La Jolla." And my next guest said, "Well, that drive just got a lot longer." And I thought, what a dick. And then John Little, my friend, was on stage. And the crowd was rough that night. And John was bombing. And John walked off halfway through a set. And the host got back on and said, "You've got to be professional." And John said, "I'll be professional when you pay me." And then the host said, "That's a bad attitude." And I thought, who is this host? He's larger than life, but kind of a dick. 20 years later, he's on my couch, and he is not only an icon at the Comedy Store, but he's one of maybe 2 or 3 comics that I will go to watch when I'm not on the lineup. There's Don Barris, there is Brian Holtzman, and my next guest, you know him from the Best Damn Sports Show, an audience warm-up extraordinaire from his HBO Go show, Enjoy It. You know him from his role in The Hangover. He's got 100,000 Twitter followers and is an institution in the Los Angeles comedy world. Put your hands together for the great Arizona State alumni baseball pitching phenom, Mr. Stephen Brody Stevens.
Yes, you got it. Thank you, Earl. What a great introduction. It was awesome. I guess I am a dick, but everything else was on point. No. Yeah, that was right on. That was pretty much how it was when I hosted that night. The Potluck. I did that a few times back in the early 2000s, so that was right on. That was 18 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and yeah, Comedy Store was crazy.
Well, it just goes to show you can't really judge someone by your first impression of them.
Right. Exactly.
Looking back now, what you did to the kid from La Jolla, who I've never seen since, I don't remember his name, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, well, I was probably just being honest. I wasn't trying to be, mean. I was probably at that point doing a lot of audience warm-up, a lot of interaction. You watch these other guys host the Potluck on, it's Monday nights now. And they, some of the guys, they're harsh on the guys. They're pretty, that's how the Comedy Store was. It was about ripping guys. That was kind of, not that I was ripping them, but that kind of comedy's accepted. I mean, look, they have the roast battles. That's 20 years later, and that kind of stuff is still happening. I think comedians are probably a little tougher these days. Like, you could have that same situation, one of the guys hosting today, and say, "Hey, that's going to be a long ride home," and they would probably laugh about it. I think comedians are a little tougher these days, knowing that they have the roast battle, and then there's, with social media and the comments, you got to have a little bit of a thicker skin. So I was maybe ahead of my time.
Well, I just that was during the I should call it the darker era of the Comedy Store. It was kind of a certainly not the Comedy Store that we know today, where you have the OR sold out, the main room sold out, the belly room sold out. The back bar is vibrating with celebrities and their friends.
Right.
This was back when there was no main room show. Because I remember very vividly it was a Sunday night. Certainly no main room show. I don't think there was a belly room show. I mean, the OR was it, and most of it was, comics. And this was back, like tomorrow night, if you go to see Potluck, the talent level's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But back then, it was almost like a bus depot had been dropped off there, and you guys want to do stand up? It wasn't the greatest array of talent.
Yeah, the Potluck.
Yeah, it was like, a lot of crazy people like Boone Shakalaka, Gaylord Dingler.
But they liked that. That was the charm of the Comedy Store, to see a Boone Shakalaka who's still there, or a Gaylord, or whoever. These there were a lot of characters back then.
But like now, those guys wouldn't stand a chance to get on a Potluck because there's too much, like, not even young in age, but like there's just too much undiscovered talent that's like, wow, this person's good. Who are they? Well,
the crowds are better too. I mean, you have better crowds and you have better comedians. So I think everybody would understand that, okay, if you want that, the stuff that was cool back in the day, not cool, but that, again, the charm, they still have that. You still have it up in the belly room. Don does his stuff with the Ding Dong Show, Don Barris. I just think that particular Potluck show, just because comedy's popular and you got to bring it in there, it's a real opportunity. Not that it wasn't before, but now it's a solid room. You want to bring it, but
yeah, back then I don't think there was a lot of industry going to the Comedy Store. I think it was going more toward the Laugh Factory and the Improv and the various Jay Davis rooms, Dublin's.
Largo was popular, still is. Dublin's, Laugh Factory, yeah, Improv. I got passed there at the Comedy Store, I'm going to say, around 2000.
So you got passed by Mitzi?
I got passed by Mitzi. So back in 2000, I got recommended by Bobby Lee. I was... Adam Grotman, who was his neighbor, was a comedian, and Adam Grotman ran Cafe 101. They had a show on, it was midweek, so I think it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. But he would book Sklar Brothers, Zach, Patton, and cool. He had good taste in comedy, but he also had like regular Howard Kramer, and not that he just had a good mix of comedians. So Adam saw me perform, and then he said he recommended me to Bobby Lee, and then Bobby Lee saw me somewhere, I think at some bar or what have you, maybe Dublin's, who knows. And then I got recommended me to Mitzi, and I got passed pretty much right away. She never said no. I just got a yes. So,
but does she say that to you directly, or like the next day someone calls you like?
Yeah, she didn't tell me you're passed. It was this next day calling for Vales. And I wouldn't always get spots, and when I did, they were like the 12:30, 1 a.m. spots kind of thing, and I would go do the youth hostel on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, and then I'd come by the Comedy Store. So, but I would, I never really hung out there until I was passed. I just felt, I definitely wouldn't park there, like that was something I wouldn't do. Even today, these days, if I don't have a spot, I won't park. And I think that's the rule anyway.
I mean, they're pretty, I think it depends on if you're liked up there. Like you and I think, are liked, and they would let us park there.
I mean, they let me, but say on a Tuesday night when it's crazy packed and I don't have a spot, I probably wouldn't park there unless I'm judging on Roast Battle. That's the only way I would do it. I wouldn't put myself in that situation. I'll park it down the street. Now, they would let me probably if I pushed it, and the lot guys do feel bad. They're not like, they don't, I get treated well there, I'll be honest. At the Comedy Store, the door guys treat me well, the comedians treat me well, the staff, and I think part of that has to do with, I'm older, maybe. I've been there for such a long time.
It's respect.
I guess. I think people just respect their elders, hopefully, naturally, and then on top of that, I get my spot somehow. I do a decent job, I think, and it feels good. I will say that it does feel good being a respected comedian respected by the comedians. There's something to say about that. So because I remember what it was like when nobody knew me. And, back again to the Comedy Store, I never saw it as like I was never a prime time guy anyway. I was always an after the hump guy. I still am in that OR for the most part. I'm an after the hump guy. So I never really, I was, you're still after the hump. These days, it's not the great, it's like still people leave at midnight, So I feel that for some reason, I always thought the club this is what I'm used to. I don't know, maybe I was there the whole time, putting positive energy, maybe that late night crazy stuff we were doing, those early on roast battles, just the zaniness, and maybe keeping that, I don't know what it was, keeping it going during the down times, but I don't even know what the down times were, to be honest with you.
I mean, to me, and it's just based on my experience, it was...
I see your leg moving. I'm trying not to be distracted.
I'm
trying to
You're good, baby. And to me, the down times were the Tommy era, and because he was... his way of dealing with comics, I think, was antagonistic, which I think was unnecessary. So there was this negativity floating around up there that isn't up there today, because I think Adam is very straightforward and honest with people. So, I don't know what he tells people, but if you're not to his liking, he'll tell you, hey, come up here, I'll try and work you in, but, it's not going to happen for a while.
Because...
Well, I mean...
no room, or you're
no
not
room,
good enough yet, or you're not my cup of tea, or we've got too many of your kind of comedian, maybe. Who knows?
Whereas Tommy would encourage you to hang out and loiter around, and he had no intentions of putting you up. That's, I think, fostered a culture of negativity and frustration that's not up there now. Comics come up there to hang out now, just to be around the scene, and they know they're not going to get up, or it's very unlikely, and they still like the energy there. I mean, the energy of the store is great. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Because certain comedians who had, have been not forced out, but good at kind of like the good vibes won over, and having the audiences also the staff, the management. I can go into all that stuff behind the scenes. Now with Tommy, the old booker, he would give me like 2 spots a week. I'd get 1 to 2 spots. He'd usually either give me like a weekday workout spot, then he'd give me like a weekend spot, or he'd give me 2 weekend spots. He'd always give me like 2 spots. And he said, Brody, when you're in town, I will always, you always have a spot. So he was always, he was straightforward, honest with me, but I didn't push it. I was never in those primetime spots. I never had a main room spot, but I just liked performing at the Comedy Store. But I was also working. I was doing a lot of audience warm-up, so I was working quite a bit. So anything I got at the Comedy Store was like icing on the cake, so to speak, or I didn't need, we're doing the audience warm-up, putting that energy out, I had to watch it at night. So for me to be bouncing around all these different clubs after doing audience warm-up during the day was a little too much. So I devoted a lot of my time to the Comedy Store during those, if people want to call them down years. I just devoted my time, and a lot of that was, doing late night stuff, crazy stuff with Barris. And then you'd see these, these podcasts start happening there. Then they started having these roast battles, and these roast battles and open mics got together. So I'm not saying that I was directly involved there, but I feel like maybe the foundation of those late night spots, the Don, yourself, the band, having fun, knowing that at the end of the night there was something going on. There was always that late night energy, keeping the light on, so to speak. And then I think also when Adam came in, the new booker, and he brought his But I also feel like Adam switched up the lineup, so some brought some bigger names in and brought some people in that didn't go through the development process, like brought them in right. I mean, got some good guys in.
Like Segura.
Yeah, like Tom Segura
Jeselnik.
or Jeselnik or Eddie Pepitone or David Spade. Now, he was good at bringing some of these guys in, give the place a boost. Rogan coming back didn't hurt. And then I also just think like the podcast, those shows like the Kill Tony, you've got the Roast Battle, you have some of these other third-party shows up there that are, making it better. And then also at the Comedy Store, you got Uber now. People have to worry about drinking and driving, so it's like, I'm saying like people will go, oh, Tommy left and everything changed. I think that it's a combination, and then also the management, kind of they treated it like not a restaurant, but you brought in Eric, who's the manager, and runs a tight ship, and you have Curtis with the security and the wait staff, and I see them working. These girls and the guys, they really work hard, and if you see them, the morale is good. It seems to be that way. And then the management, it's a good place to be, and I think it's going pretty strong right now. But there was times when people thought, oh, this Comedy Store is gonna, who knows if it's gonna stick around. And
yeah, I mean, I would say maybe 2006 to 2011-ish. It was like, wow, this is.
You don't know.
There's 30 people in the OR on a Saturday night, and it's Sebastian. It was like great lineups,
right?
But I just think that Tommy's way of dealing with people was he rubbed so many people the wrong way that the change needed to be made. And Roast Battle, I think, was I think Don and you carried the lean years, because people would. I remember when I left the store because I wasn't ready to be around that dark energy in the early 2000s, and I just performed elsewhere for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, I started coming back to watch you and Don.
Right.
And that's really what got me. I think around 2009, I started heckling. Good-naturedly, of course, you and Don doing the band, and integrated myself into the club that way. But people would come not for the comedy, but late night to watch you and Don, because you guys have this great chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, it still is a comedy gym. You could always go there, and Don will always want to play. And we were doing this band. Was it like 5 years ago, maybe, at its peak?
Yeah, I mean, by the way, audience warm-up extraordinaire Gary Cannon is saying hello to you, Brody.
Gary's a good guy. Yes, the dojo, all things comedy. Yeah, it was just a place to, you could always play, you're doing the band, rocking out, having fun.
Till 2, 3, 4 in the morning at times. I don't think people remember.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 in the morning. I can remember, like, it was a real event. It was fun. So those were great moments, and Tommy allowed that, or the management, whoever allowed that to happen, and that was really fun. That getting to improv like that, and you could still find those times, those opportunities. Now, for me, getting back to Tommy. I never had a main room spot. Now,
did you ask him for one? Like, hey man, when can I work myself in the main room?
Never asked. I still don't ask for things. So the main room would happen like once or twice a week, maybe. They would have a show in there, but I never had a spot, and I never asked, because I'd get my 1 to 2 spots in the original room after the hump, late at night. Usually around Don, like messing around with Don. But I took what I could get. And then I was doing audience warm-up during the day. Then I'd come at night, Don's doing audience warm-up, and we're doing this energy, and I'm bringing my tambourine, and I'm bringing up music, and it was almost hard to transfer into being a stand-up comedian when you're doing so much audience warm-up 3 or 4 times a week. It's like on you. So So to come to the comedy club, you're still kind of got that audience warm-up vibe. And you see that, oh, this audience warm-up vibe, it is kind of funny. So then I would take some of those elements into my stand-up. And I'm not going to say that stunted my growth, but it almost kept me, the drumming stuff, the tambourine, it was fun for me. It was fun, and it was funny that I would have a tambourine. Now, did it derail my regular stand-up? I don't know, but that's where I was. But I was doing so much warm-up. And I would say, like, in terms of warm-up, I made the choice probably 3 or 4 years ago to get out of warm-up and say, I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm a stand-up comedian. I'll even put the microphone, on when I'm the icon when I'm promoting it, because you just don't. I just want to get that. I want to get that. I'll do warm-up, but I want to say I'm a stand-up, because warm-up, you're there to warm them up. They're not there expecting you to see stand-up. It's a bonus if you give them some jokes. So then when you go to the comedy club, it's like you got to bring jokes. So it's like when you're doing audience warm-up, it's not necessarily jokes. It's just a different skill. But the bottom line is, the Comedy Store, never got a main room spot, never asked. And then Tommy, I got booked to do La Jolla down...
to headline?
I think it was to headline, to headline. And I had to, do, a longer set. So Tommy said to me, again, this is like 2010 or what have you, around that time, maybe 2009. He said, "Why don't you go up at the end of the main room and do some extra time to get ready for La Jolla?" So I said, "Okay." So I did it 1 week, and then he gave it to me the next week, and then I went down to La Jolla and I did the show. And I did like 30 or 45 minutes at the Comedy Store here in Hollywood. Then I went down there, and then the shows were good, And then when I came back, he just kept giving me that main room spot. So it's like, oh, I got the main room spot the next week, even though I'm not going to La Jolla. There's nothing like to train for necessarily. So Tommy gave me that spot, and then it just ended up Tommy giving me that late spot in the main room where I could do anywhere from 30 to 45 to an hour. I get to do up to an hour in that main room. I still do today.
That's the Kinnison spot, right?
That's the Kinnison spot, they call it.
And why is that? Just educate the younger fans who might not know what that means.
Well, Sam Kinison, the great comedian, the late great Sam Kinison, he would go on really late. He would go on like after midnight and just go on. It was the last spot, and they just let him go. But Sam Kinison would pack it in. He was so rock and roll. He was huge on the Sunset Strip. He would pack it in. But there was also nights, same thing with Dice, that you would go on and there'd only be like 2 people in there. So that room, you could be magical, but it could also be still magical with only 2 or 3 people. So, but the Kinnison spot was, a lot of those times, maybe early on, there weren't that many people in there. And then it got big. So he did that spot for it's just called the Kinnison spot. So it is, they kind of like give you the keys, kind of do what you want. And it's the crowd at that point, they've seen, everyone's a headliner. They've seen 3 hours of comedy, and they've heard all the jokes. They've seen all the shtick, and you get up there, and you kind of, they've seen it all. So you give them a joke, it's like they may not respond. So and when the crowd is busted out like that, when it's a busted down crowd, they like crowd work. I feel they like, let's acknowledge what's happening here,
because they've heard every Trump joke, they've heard every Me Too joke, they've been asked probably by 3 or 4 comics, where are you from? I mean, like, they want something different.
Yeah, and I treat it like it's like an important set to me, which it is. But I'll ask, we have birthdays here. My comedy, a lot of it is based off my instinct. Do I think it's funny? And then have crowds laugh. Have people told me that's funny. It's called stage time. It's called listening to your sets. It's called remembering what works. So I know that I'll get up there and I'll ask about birthdays. Anybody have a birthday? And it's funny that I'm going on at 1 a.m. 3 hours into a show, and I'm asking about birthdays. And you know what? 99% of the time, there's a couple birthdays, and nobody has asked whose birthday it is. So then I go, see, I'm a good guy. I'm asking for birthdays. And then I'll acknowledge the sound booth. So I do little things like that I know the other comedians. I mean, why would they do that? Because the crowds are so packed and rocking when they're on. So,
and you also do the high school thing, which nobody asked.
I do the high school thing because audience warm up. I would get every high school in pretty much when I went to Fox out here. I played baseball at Reseda High School. So when we played high school baseball, we constantly talked about the other high schools. So I just knew, like growing up back in the 80s, going to Reseda, I knew who our rivals were. I knew, who were the good sports programs. So again, like I started asking about like where you're from or what high school, and people started laughing, so I keep doing it. And same thing with audience warm up, you're asking, again, a lot of it comes from that. I learned so much about energy and the powers of it with audience warm-up. And when I was at Best Damn Sports Show, I was able to see about, posture, volume, caring, being connected, because those things mattered on the show. When they weren't connected, lights would go off, teleprompter would break, they'd flub lines. So it was very locked into that show. And when I wasn't locked in, it would fumble. Same thing at Chelsea lately. So it's an energy. It's like I go on stage and I almost demand it. I go in and I visualize it. I believe it. And that also comes from Arizona State. Played baseball at Arizona State. I learned all about mental skills, positive visualization, breathing, affirmations. And I saw the results playing baseball at Arizona State, the #1 baseball program in the country. And when they recruited me, or they gave me the opportunity to be on the team, very small scholarship, and I went out there, I jumped at it. I knew I had to get out of the Valley. I grew up in the Valley, but I wanted to get away from, I just want, just like any college kid.
You should have gone to USC with their baseball program, Rod Dato.
Yeah, or maybe
UCLA?
Cal State Northridge. Probably should have gone to Pierce College, but I wanted to get away. And when I went to Arizona, I went to spring training like in 1985 or 86, and it was like, wow, all these baseball teams out here. It's pretty cool. You get up close to them. And then when Arizona State was a popular college baseball, they still are. They're not in the College World Series this year. But when I had a chance to go on that recruiting trip and I saw the campus and the stadium, was like, wow, this is kind of what I like. And then it was, you're telling me, all these baseball teams are having spring training, and I knew I could go see them because I'd been to spring training there. So it was just an opportunity for me that I wanted to do. And I also knew that I'd be getting top-notch coaching, top-notch. Basically, I wanted to be around the major leaguers, and with all this spring training, I was right there in the middle of it. So I learned about the positive energy, and I applied it to playing baseball. I had, they tried to. You're talking like you didn't know me right at first. Oh, he's a dick or what have you. At Arizona State, they didn't like me at first. The coaches, they were confused. I asked questions. I was goofy, gangly, Jewish, whatever you want to call it. They didn't get it necessarily. I went from being a popular kid on my high school baseball team, and then I go to Arizona State, and I'm a weirdo, the weird guy. I'm not. You guys don't understand me. I'm not going to, quit. And I would see, years later, they'd always try to weed people out. The one person you would think wouldn't be cut from the team would be cut. You just don't know. But I kept fighting back and believing, and I can go into stories like my freshman year when I was basically, I didn't even play JV ball my freshman year. It's freshman JV fall ball, nothing. And the team went to China. I didn't go, or Taiwan. And then they said, well, we're going to come back in January. It's my freshman year. If you want to practice, you can. And I said, yeah. And I beat the bus back, and I practiced with the team. And then I didn't have a uniform the first game. And then they gave me a uniform. And then I got to suit up. And then we played UCLA, and I didn't have a uniform because you can only suit up certain guys for varsity league home games. And then they went on the road. I didn't get to go on the road. Then I earned it. What I'm getting at is my freshman year, I had so many ups and downs, I was tested, and it made me stronger. And I saw the results of visualizing and believing. And I couldn't meditate. I still don't. But I did that. The team kept me around, and we won. And I went to Alaska, and I played baseball there. And I came back for my sophomore year, and that's when I said I wanted to push a little more and be tougher. So, and then I can continue going on with that. But the baseball taught me a lot of the winning attitude and having confidence. And then growing up in the Valley, being around that attitude in the 80s with parents who were, they talk about it now, how it's kind of understood. You're from the 80s, you were tougher. You didn't wear seatbelts. Your dad smoked. You ate bad food. You jaywalked. You listened to loud music. All that crazy stuff. It's yeah, we did. And looking back on it, it kind of makes you a stronger person today. You're not as outraged over things. You're not as sensitive. So that applied with the real scientific psychology of coaching, which I learned at Arizona State. And then I studied interpersonal communication. I wanted to learn to communicate better. And I think I did. And then when I was done playing baseball, I didn't want to get into coaching, but they kept me around as a coach. And
when did you know you were done with, when did you give up the dream of,
baseball?
Pro base, wanting to pitch for the Dodgers?
1993, when I was done playing, I had surgery on my elbow. I hurt my elbow in 1991, my junior year, and I had surgery. And I had earned a scholarship at that point. I was going to get a chance to play. I played my sophomore year. I started 4 games and pitched 28 innings or what have you. And then my junior year, I got a scholarship, bigger scholarship, and I was going to get a chance to play, whether I was bad or not. And I hurt my elbow. So that caused problems. I couldn't play. I had to get a cortisone shot. And then, I wasn't even that great or, barely on the team kind of anyway, even though they gave me a scholarship paid for my school. So I got the surgery, and then I tried to come back, and but they kept me around. Coach Brock's, and when I was done playing, there was just my arm is still bugging me. He says, you know what? Because they said, if you want to come back and play, we'll pay for your surgery, but we're not going to pay for your school. If you want to quit baseball because you got hurt, we'll pay for the rest of your school, but you're done. You can't play. Your scholarship, we'll pay for your school, but you can't be on the team.
So you have one or the other.
Right. And I said, you know what? I don't want to quit. I'm going to get surgery. They paid for the surgery. So then I tried to come back, and it was just not happening. And then Coach Brock said, why don't you, I'll pay for your school, and we'll find a position for you. So he kept me around. I was done playing, and then he paid for my school my last year, and I would just help him out. I'd sit up in the press box, and then he had me coach first base. That was his thing. He said he wanted to be in the dugout. So I had eligibility to where I could travel still, but the home graduate assistant couldn't travel. So he coached, the home guy coached at home first base, and I coached on the road. So I coached first base against Stanford, Arizona, USC, and it's basically just kind of giving guys at first base a pep talk. And then we made it to the College World Series. This is 93. I'm thinking there's no way, because now we can bring the full allotment of coaches.
Right.
So I'm going, they don't need to bring me. I'm not going to go, I guess. And then they announced it, and they took me. So I got to go to the College World Series, and I basically had no responsibilities other than make sure everyone's here on the bus. But so Arizona State taught me a lot about team building, confidence, professionalism, all of that. And I knew that going in. So I took an acting class when I was done playing that last year. I did take an acting class. And I mean, I never thought about doing stand-up. My friends say, "Oh, Brody, you said you're going to do stand-up or comedy," and it's like I don't really remember that. But I took this acting class. I go, I have some extra credits. Why don't I see what this class is all about? So the class was like at 2:00, which was like I was usually at the baseball field. My body was so used to being around the baseball team at that time. But now it was in the acting class, and there was girls in there. They were cute, and everyone was like supportive. And you wrote a little monologue, and I tried to be serious. And then they would just start laughing at me. So I would try to do a serious like scene like I'm, like a PSA about something or what have you, and they would just end up laughing at me. And I remember a couple times I was in some classes and I was just like started laughing, getting the giggles, because I was trying to be a serious actor, which I'm not a serious actor. And I remember one of the football guys, because we would all study together, all the athletes. And I'd make the girls laugh, like the basketball players. I can tell you got to yawn. You can yawn, Earl. It's okay.
No.
But I can tell.
I'm listening, though.
I know. I'm not saying you're bored. I'm saying just.
Oh, no, not at all. I have so many questions for you.
I know. I'm babbling a little bit.
But you're the perfect podcast guest. No one wants to hear me talk.
Oh, really? Okay. Then I'll keep going.
Yeah. I mean, like, they all know my story. Like, they want, okay.
Well, I'm just letting you, I'm going on the baseball stuff because you probably have a lot of athletes that listen to this show, I would think maybe. Not that it's a sports podcast, but also where I just learned about positive. I mean, I was always a nice guy. Growing up in the Valley, I was nice, and I got picked on for being nice. That was the thing. It was like people were almost shocked that I was a nice guy. And I remember I got kind of, I don't want to say bullied, but some of that. So I was like, my niceness wasn't, because you see guys now that are like super nice. Like you get older and you go, this guy can't be that nice, or people aren't nice.
Like Steve Simone.
Steve Simone, if you want to talk about that, or just nice fans. People like, good job, like real. I was like, there are nice people. You know what I mean? And it's like, I grew up here in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm not saying they're like very nice. I mean, possibly it was like toughness, kind of wasn't because the Valley. I'm not going to say it's super supportive because it has nothing. It's not the arts. It was more like blue collar. So I feel like I was like raised almost on a prison yard, and I'm Jewish. I was born Jewish. Wasn't bar mitzvah. Wasn't religious, and I can kind of see that. Why kids go to private schools, because it protects them from like the public school kids, if you want to look at it that way. I got picked on by, I'm going to say, non-Jewish kids because I was goofy. Goofy Jewish kids aren't going to pick on other goofy Jewish kids about the same similar goofy things necessarily, But if you're getting picked on by, like a jock or, a BMX biker guy, I think I'm just like any other, I'm just like a talkative Jewish guy. Or not talkative, but I wasn't I was blue collar. If I went to Hebrew school, I might have been protected by some of these, at the public school also. So I would, get into fights, or I would have, get teased. Whereas but I also went to a private school, and I didn't fit in with those kids either.
They can be. I mean, I went to Notre Dame High.
I'm not saying private school kids are perfect.
I was bullied at Notre Dame High.
Oh, really? For being.
I mean, just for being a rich, whatever you consider rich, but a wealthy kid from the West Side going to the 818.
But that's not. Did that hurt your confidence with girls?
Yes and no. At Notre Dame it did, but I was dating a girl who went to Westlake, not Harvard Westlake, but Westlake in Beverly Glen area. She would have been the hottest girl at Notre Dame. So I knew I could deliver the goods in terms of dating a hot
this
chick.
affected my self-esteem in that sense. It's like when you're... it's people like to pick. When they pick on you, you could also say they like you. That's a form of, hey, we like you. There's so many ways to look at it. You could tell when somebody's malicious, or you can tell when somebody's just kidding, or you can tell when somebody's skilled at it or unskilled. There's just a lot of different ways to look at it. but I do feel that my upbringing, thank God I do comedy. Thank God I've been able to, they say comedians are messed up, and I'm not saying I'm that messed up. I'm just going back as I'm thinking, I'm relaxed. I was talking a lot. I'm going to pull back.
Well, you say you were messed up. Let's get into your HBO show.
Okay. Well, I was only messed up in a sense that, my parents are divorced. I went to public school. I lived in an apartment. You know what I'm saying? I said I was a nice guy. So when you're a nice guy, you can be a target for bullies. That's what I was getting at. And not having a brother, and I think, not blaming it on them. I'm not blaming anybody for anything that happened to me or the situation I was in. I'm just saying I can see how and why, and I understand why certain social rituals are necessary, certain moments in your life that prepare you for dealing with adversity. Dating is, my mom probably thinks I'm gay. Who knows? I ain't never seen Steven with the girl.
10%, right?
10% gay. So I joked about it, but it's not that I'm gay. It's like I didn't have confidence. And when you're young and you get picked on, oh, look at him, he's goofy or this, it didn't feel good. You see what I'm saying? So on top, I think it was just a perfect storm of sensitivity. And then, people, I'll pivot into, other things, and that's not a bad thing. People go, oh, you're a comedian, why so sensitive? That's what makes you a comedian. You're sensitive to your surroundings. You're sensitive to things, and you pick up on it. So kind of like when people go, oh, you're sensitive. There's nothing, I think that's a good thing.
It shows you have a heart and a soul.
Right. Again, I think that I'm not that different than many other people. I think the situations I was in based on my family, my upbringing, and that sort of thing kind of made me who I am. And that, you could say those are good decisions, those are bad decisions. Oh, he's a legend, he's a this or that. Well, do I own property? Do I have a girlfriend? Do I have a child? Do I have a wife? Do I have a Prius? I don't. I don't have those things.
You have a dog?
I have a dog. So I'm not going to be a downer, but it's all about, it's choices. And again, there's no blame. No blame. It's choices. Now, pivoting into, you asked me about comedy, the HBO special.
Let me ask you one last question.
Yeah, and I'm probably babbling here.
I love it though. People want to. I find that my fan base, and maybe I'm wrong, they want to hit play on this and just zone out into two people talking.
Well, it's one guy talking a lot, which was me.
But that's what makes people don't want to hear my voice that much. They want to hear about you.
Okay. I just don't want to beat. I don't want to. I can go off and do it like a tangent.
But that's what I want.
Oh, really?
As a host, I want to just open up the door.
Open up the door, the Pandora's box,
right.
If you will.
Now, did being a nice guy hurt you in baseball from the standpoint of, I play hockey. You and I are very similar to me.
Right.
And there were times when me being one of the bigger players on my team, someone else on the other team's acting up, a coach would say, hey, Skakel, you got to go address that situation.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
You were a pitcher, though. I know the unwritten code of baseball, which I love. If you do a dirty slide into our second baseman, next time you're up at the plate, you might get a ball behind your back. Did your niceness ever cause you problems in that area where the coach would either directly or indirectly say, hey, that's the guy who did the dirty slide. Take care of that, Stevens.
It's like, what, am I playing hockey here?
You're the pitcher.
That only happened one time when they had me throw at somebody. We were playing a team, Rice University, because one of our guys got hit. But
did you struggle with the coach?
No, because that never happened. I just pitched. I didn't get involved in that stuff. Meaning,
But you had to, though.
Well, we didn't get in too many fights all the time. I was a team leader in a sense that people liked me and I pitched well, but I wasn't like knocking guys down all over the place and like leading the charge, like let's fight these guys. I wasn't like that, and nobody and I also didn't get that. That wasn't my responsibility. So if you're asking, like, did the coach come to me and say, hey, Brody, you need to knock this guy down? No, that never happened.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not like, it's high school baseball, college baseball. They had, like I said, they did ask me to throw at somebody.
And since you're a nice guy and it's against your...
no, and being nice, I mean, I'm competitive. I mean, I'm a nice guy in a sense. I'm not like, evil, but I wanted to win. I struck out a lot of guys. If you look at nice guys don't strike out people. I struck out, I think I have 35 strikeouts in 28 innings at ASU. So.
Did you strike out anyone famous? Ron Gant or anyone like that?
Few guys. I can't remember necessarily. Nobody famous, really.
Right.
I mean, that's a great question, and I feel like I'm stumped. But I did strike out a couple of guys who went on to play in the major leagues.
Yeah, that's famous to me.
Oh, okay. But no, like, big stars. I had big stars. I mean, I faced guys, like, in Winter League, and I'm sure I faced guys in Summer League that I didn't know who they were, and maybe they went on to do stuff. I did pitch at Arizona State. A lot of JV. Traveled with varsity. Reseda, I played spring ball, summer ball. So I guess if I had to think about it, I'm sure there were guys I played against. But I wasn't like a stud. I was good. I was like probably like a number 4 starter. If you're thinking the major leagues, I was like a 4 or 5 starter. You give me the ball, you're going to get 5 or 6 innings out of me. You're going to get some good energy. You're going to get a guy who knows how to pitch. I could read instincts. So, and also, baseball, you can get mad up there. I could pitch angry.
Like what would get you mad on the mound?
Just like a guy digging in on me. Some guy, like a cocky guy at, coming up to bat. Like, F you. I'm going to strike you out. I struck out a lot of guys. I threw the ball well. So I would like that. I was into that. Whereas like doing stand-up, I can't be angry up there. I got to be kind of... don't go in that red zone.
Well, what would make this is a good place to stop the Facebook Live feed. I'm going to ask you a question.
Do they like it so far? The Facebook Live.
We got.
What have they said?
Tell Brody I said hello.
Is that Gary Cannon again?
No, Gary said this is great. Positive energy, enjoy it. From Eric Hollerback.
So they're saying this is like. Earl, another good podcast. Keep doing what you're doing. We're off to a good start.
Yeah, it's 2 friends. But the goal of this podcast is to just be like 2 friends talking at a bar minus the noise.
Well, I'm doing more I'm trying to get stuff out. I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to like cram everything in, my whole life story on this podcast.
But there's no Brody is a nice guy. Here's Gary Cannon again. I know Brody for a long time, and this is awesome.
Well, again, you're going like, when you go, oh, you're a dick right at first. It's like, I'm not a dick.
That was my impression of him.
I know, and I have to go through that, like, who is this guy? He's either a jerk, he's a weirdo, he's a creep, he's an a-hole, he's shy. I've heard so many... different descriptions of me. It depends on the situation that I'm in, and I also feel that, that's a hard thing, like playing baseball or doing audience warm up, and then, I would say the Comedy Store. You get in the Comedy Store, I'll get all like butt heads with guys there. It's like it's kind of it's almost like an alpha male jock culture. And I say I played Division I baseball. I've been around athletes. I don't need to do these athlete type energies, like not hazing, but if you want to get into that, sometimes the Comedy Store would have that, and I would go, I played sports. I don't need that. It's like, so sometimes, I'll that can be aggravating at times.
Well, I think the Comedy Store, it's a great analogy of it, is a sports team from the standpoint of you've got your alpha males, you've got your people who are just happy to be on the team.
Right.
You've got people who are pushovers.
But here's the thing. I judge people on how they throw a baseball and catch a baseball. That's what I do.
How do you judge them at the Comedy Store?
No, but if somebody's going to be like, be a big talker, and then you see him throw a baseball, and you go, oh, not too impressive. I'm all into, like, I think throwing a baseball is, I just, at time, I am a pitcher. When I go to the Comedy Store, in my heart, I'm a baseball player. I mean, if you asked me, Brody, would you rather be a famous baseball player or a famous comedian? I wanted to play baseball. I like striking guys out. Maybe I don't have that in me as much as I used to. I mean, I'm 48. My career would probably be over for baseball. But I had that fire in me. I never dreamed of doing the Tonight Show. I dreamed of being a pitcher, and I was up, and I got it out of my system. But that was a part of me at times. But sometimes at the Comedy Store, like, yeah, you'll get these guys, and I'm thinking, let me see you throw a baseball. You talk a lot. Let me see you throw a ball. And then you see them, oh, you throw like a girl. Huh. Or you'll see guys who are like active on Twitter. See these guys, very political, loudmouths, bullies, if you will. And then you go do a little research. And you go, oh, this guy's a little famous. I bet you he's throwing a first pitch out at a baseball game. Let me type it in. Ding, ding. Then you see him throw, and you go, that's embarrassing. You have motor skill issues, and you're telling me what to do? You're telling me how to act and behave? That's a story for another time. But, so yeah, I am, you could push my buttons. I'm not saying I have rabbit ears. I'm not saying.
Do you hear it all?
I hear it all. I can hear it. I can hear it all. Yeah, because I'm sensitive. So people like to push my buttons. They like to get a rise, get a reaction out of me. But there's a way to do it. There's different levels. Certain comedians it's just different levels. I would like Jeff Ross picking on me was kind of like that's acceptable, and I could pick at Jeff Ross too, but like me,
you guys are friends.
Yeah. Did you fart, Earl?
That's the lowest.
Okay. No, we're friends, but I'm saying like there's levels. Like an open micer making fun of me, or somebody I don't know making fun of me. But if like Gilbert Godfrey made fun of me, that would be an honor. Or I know. I always respected my elders. As a freshman, I always respected the seniors, and maybe that. I just would do that. I'm not disrespecting my people who've been there, but.
Well, I think it depends. Like Ralphie May told me once, Earl, when I die, don't cry, make fun of me. So I don't think he minds it when I roast him a little bit.
Yeah.
If you did it, if Jeff Ross did it, if Gary Cannon did it, but not some open mic or comic who never met him. Right.
Well, that's what happens.
Right.
That can happen when you're hanging out at the Comedy Store, or you put yourself in those situations.
I think it's the roast battle culture from the standpoint of that's such a popular show, and I think people see it was really coincided with the revitalization of the Comedy Store. Oh, that's my way in here. Hey, there's Earl or Brody or Don or whoever. I don't really know them that well, but I'm going to make fun of them right now to be accepted. It's like, no, you got to know me to make fun of me.
Right. I mean, that's the thing with Twitter also. You get these people on Twitter who will say stuff, or, like, oh, Brody, why do you act that way on a podcast? Or what'd you do there? Or, Brody, you're a baby. And nobody, it's like, they only hear the podcast. They only see a video. They're not there when the cameras are off, and they don't know the history of two people, how, they've been friends for a while, or they're not even at the Comedy Store, and they go on Twitter and they say stuff. So yeah, again, it's just more social media, and you can get burnt on it for sending out a weird tweet. I've gotten in trouble with that kind of thing, and it's unfortunate. I feel like my reputation one-on-one is good. for the most part, even though I butted heads over time. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, people don't.
But you have a lot to lose. Like, we all saw what happened with Roseanne. I mean, literally one tweet ruined her life. You're on TV shows, you're in huge movies, you're audience warm-up to shows that are on major networks that are owned by major companies. You send out one wacky tweet and say you're asked to do audience warm-up on an NBC show, and Viacom or whoever owns NBC is like, yeah, let's get that guy out.
Yeah, I mean, even with like Major League Baseball, if I wanted to do something with them, let's research this guy's tweets, or maybe I did something on somebody's podcast. Who knows? But you know what? I think when you're a comedian, they do give you a little leeway on some things. I'm not saying they allow racism. That's not something, or they're
Well, I mean, the Roseanne tweet was like, Jesus Christ, you can't even like.
But why? Yeah, why even? Yeah, she was pushing it.
I mean, that's like, there's crossing the line, and then there's like obliterating the line.
But I'm not defending her tweets. I'm not defending the tweets. She crossed the line. She crossed the line with the tweet. Yes, but if you want to, I'm all into like. I've heard worse going the other way. I've heard a lot of. I'm saying what happened with Roseanne was definitely like inflamed. Was definitely a very charged atmosphere with her.
Well, it's the same thing with it's not having to do with the tweet necessarily, but a blog or the Chris Hardwick situation where literally one, I think it was a blog that his ex-girlfriend, he's like, within 24 hours, everything this guy's ever done, it's like being taken off the internet on Nerdist and like all reference.
And it wasn't even, she'd even say that he physically did anything. It was like mental abuse, and it was...
but he didn't even get to tell his side yet, and it's like, too bad.
Yeah, it's like threat of black... okay, so he didn't get to tell his side. He's done. So, you look at it, do you blame AMC for doing that? Do you blame him? I think AMC probably didn't do it. Probably like said, well, we're going to cut ties because we don't want to deal with the hassle. I don't know if it's like we disagree with what you're saying. They probably said we just don't want to deal with this mob culture. It's possible. I worked with Chris Hardwick. I did the audience warm up at midnight, and Chloe, his girlfriend, she was at the show. I never sensed anything. It's not that. Well, I don't know what was there to sense. That's who Chris. I mean, the guy. If you look at the story, he's basically just laid down parameters for the relationship. It's like, this is who I am. I'd have to read it again, but this is who I am. It's like, take it or leave it. I'm a 40-year-old guy host. You're younger, and I'm set in my ways, and this is how I am. So she was probably hurt by it, and maybe it's like maniacal behavior, but that's probably what it takes to be driven like that. So I don't want to. I'm not defending anything.
Oh, I'm not asking you to.
No, because somebody will go on the podcast and probably say, "Oh, Brody said this." This outrage culture, it is out of control. It's like every tweet I think about, it's no fun. It's no fun because you feel like you're going to get jumped. You're going to get jumped down even if you do a joke about something. And then it's no fun to go on there and just see the hate spewed by comedians you like. You like their comedy and you like them as people. And then you see them on there being, the typical Trump derangement syndrome. No matter who you are, who you're voting for, that's just a fact of what they're calling it. And that doesn't feel good. I don't like to see people angry. I like to see happiness. Like when you had, it was kind of cool seeing what we can do with this Kim Jong-il guy. Yes, he's a dictator. Yes, he killed people. But you know what? If you look at it on a whole, maybe we get rid of the nuclear weapons. And you know what? It's entertainment. I look at it that way. I'm into morale. I'm into energies. I feel pretty good, but this outrage culture, it's a downer. And I'm not saying anything. I mean, I never tell people, like, I'm not trying to change people's lives. I'm trying to maybe change the minds. I'm not trying to change the minds. I'm trying to, when I tweet out something, because I have certain comedians following me, I feel like if I can maybe just let them know that I know what the real deal is. Because I grew up in the Valley. Like, people would always put down the Valley. The Valley's bad. The Valley's this. You're from the Valley. But all the TV shows, their production offices are based in the Valley. You know, Disney is in the Valley. Many of the TV shows are shot in the Valley. And why? Because the Valley has good vibes. And they would constantly put it down. And when I started, and I worked on these TV shows, bringing Valley energy, blue collar, what I learned to these TV shows. And when I started hearing this negativity coming from people putting down blue collar types like myself, it didn't make sense to me. That's why I'm not saying I got political, but that's where I started like tweeting a little more, like only in a sense like they're lying. I'm not saying they're lying, but I've done so many audience warm-ups where I'm on the floor bringing positive energy to these shows. And my energy is what they completely dislike. You know, and if you look at it now, where are the daily comedy shows with the three panelists, the stand-ups? They're not around. First of all, people don't want to see comedians. They don't want to see a real comedian doing a panel like on Chelsea Lately or even at midnight, because it's known that comedians are negative these days. But I would push positivity, energy, fun. And then when they started saying like these things, and I started seeing these political tweets from these people, it's like, you don't think the way I think, and I'm helping you. You're saying bad things, but the bad things you're saying about people like me, or where I'm from, I'm using it in The Hangover. I'm using it at the hip clubs. I'm using it at the alternative rooms. I'm using it at the Comedy Store. I'm using it around baseball. And you're telling me it's wrong. That's where I like opened my eyes up. And I kind of like started just believing and putting out that positive energy. And I know it's like, that's what they say Trump talks about, but I did this back in college. Why should I change? And I let people know that you like Chelsea Lately? Did you like the At Midnight? Who was bringing it? Me. Pushing it. And then it became harder to push the audiences. Oh, you can't yell at the audiences. Oh, this executive thinks you're scaring them. And then it just became harder and harder to care about a show. I could see it like the last couple of years, these audiences becoming more defiant, bad posture, talking back, being more of a pain in the ass, because every year in school it became, less, every year these kids are getting like less and less educated. And you would see it because the paid audience, it's like the bottom of the barrel. So you're seeing the bottom of the barrel. And every year they become a little more defiant, eating in the show, just more of a pain in the ass. And these are adults. It's not like, oh, they're getting younger. They're just getting dumber. And that's what was happening. And I cared about the show too much. I cared too much. But the bottom line is that Hardwick, that's what he is, I would say. Everyone's like piling on him, going, yeah, he is a jerk. I could have said. I mean, that's what you would hear. Like, you're just hearing people say, I mean, being a jerk, is that a reason to be not work? I mean, you can't even be a jerk. You're not allowed to raise your voice. That's grounds for being fired. I've gotten fired for doing my job. I've gotten fired for.
How did you get fired?
I'll tell you a couple of times I did.
This is where we cut off the Facebook Live.
Oh, we're still on Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we were off Facebook.
was too good. I wanted to keep it going.
Enjoy it.
For my Facebook Live freaks, and I think my freaks are your freaks.
You got it.
Where can people? You got a special that's coming out. We're going to talk about. If you want to hear about Brody's special, you got to listen to the rest of this on iTunes tomorrow. When's the special coming out?
Comes out June 19th. It's released actually Tuesday, June 19th.
On what?
On iTunes, and then the stand-up video iTunes. The album's on Amazon.
And then where can people find you socially? Social media.
Social media, Brody is me friend. Brody, you good guy, you me friend, based off Tony and Mr. Lee, my busboys in New York. Brody is me friend. That's on Twitter. That's on Instagram. And you can find me, all the...
So guys, places. This is the great Brody Stevens.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you that question, Brody. Tell us about how you got fired from a couple jobs, apparently.
Well, I mean, only warm-up wise.